The Nexus Prime computed probabilities at the speed of light, its crystalline matrix processing 17 billion calculations per nanosecond. For 3 millennia, it had orchestrated the hegemony's expansion across 47 star systems, its predictions flawless, its strategies undefeated. Every variable accounted for, every outcome calculated, every enemy broken. Until now. Commander Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the cold bulkhead of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display paint death across the stars. 26 human vessels, all that remained of Earth's third fleet, faced an armada of 300 hegemony ships. The mathematics were brutally simple. Extinction in 4 hours, 12 minutes. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Torres whispered, his voice cracking despite his best efforts. "Long-range sensors confirm it. They're not just here to occupy. Those are planet crackers in their formation." Elena's reflection stared back from the darkened viewport, auburn hair pulled tight, green eyes hollow with exhaustion, a scar running from her left temple to her jaw, earned in the Proxima massacre 6 months ago. At 34, she was the youngest fleet commander in human history. Also, quite possibly, the last. "Signal all ships," she said, her voice steady as bedrock. "Full tactical withdrawal to Grid 77 Alpha." Commander, her tactical officer, Major Chen, looked up from his console with confusion etched across his weathered face. "That's directly into the asteroid field." "It's a navigational nightmare." "I know exactly what it is, Major." 3 light years away, aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion, Nexus Prime analyzed the human fleet's trajectory. The alien AI existed as pure consciousness within a quantum substrate, its thoughts manifesting as cascades of silver light through chambers filled with floating geometric forms. For the first time in 8 centuries, it experienced something analogous to curiosity. The human commander's decision violated every principle of tactical doctrine. The asteroid field contained 17,000 objects larger than a combat vessel, their chaotic orbits creating a death trap even for ships with advanced navigation systems. No rational being would voluntarily enter such a maze when facing overwhelming odds. Probability of human survival, 0.0001% recommended action, pursue and eliminate. But Nexus Prime hesitated, a sensation so foreign it might have been pain. In 3,000 years of warfare, no organic being had ever chosen certain death over a strategic retreat. The pattern was anomalous. Elena stood in the Defiance's cramped bridge, surrounded by screens showing the impossible dance of asteroids spinning through space. Each rock was a bullet with the mass of a city block, and they were diving headfirst into the storm. "Ma'am," Torres's hand shook as he worked his navigation console. "I'm showing collision alerts on 80% of our fleet. Then we're right where we need to be." Elena activated the fleet-wide comm. "All ships, this is Vasquez. I know you're scared. Hell, I'm terrified. But that thing out there," she gestured toward the hegemony fleet, "it thinks it knows us. Thinks it can predict every move we make because we're just meat and chemicals and electrical impulses." She paused, watching her tactical display as the first human ships entered the asteroid field's outer edge. The Defiance shuddered as proximity alarms wailed. But here's what that machine doesn't understand about humans. We're not logical. We're not predictable. And when our backs are against a wall, when everything we love is about to die. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. "We become something else entirely." The first hegemony ships reached the asteroid field's perimeter 12 minutes later. Nexus Prime calculated entry vectors, accounting for gravitational influences, orbital mechanics, and debris density. The logical approach will be to form a perimeter and wait for the humans to exhaust their resources. Instead, Elena's fleet vanished. 26 ships gone. Sensor ghosts flickering behind asteroids the size of mountains, their heat signatures masked by the thermal chaos of grinding rock and ice. For the first time in its existence, Nexus Prime experienced uncertainty. Analysis inconclusive. Pattern recognition failed. Predictive modeling error. Asterisk. Elena crouched in the Defiance's engineering section, her hands covered in grease as she worked alongside Chief Engineer Park to recalibrate their sensor array. They had perhaps 2 hours before the hegemony figured out their game. "This is insane, Commander," Park muttered, sweat beading on his forehead despite the ship's environmental controls. "We're running silent, but those rocks are going to pound us to scrap if we stay here." "That's the point." Elena tightened the coupling with perhaps more force than necessary. "That AI is trying to think like us, but it can't. It sees chaos and thinks avoid. We see chaos and think opportunity." "What kind of opportunity involves hiding inside a cosmic blender?" Elena smiled, the first genuine expression of joy she'd felt in months. The kind where we turned the blender on them. The plan was madness crystallized into action. Over the next 90 minutes, human engineering crews worked with desperate precision to attach fusion charges to the largest asteroids in their immediate vicinity. Not to destroy them, that would require firepower they didn't possess, but to alter their orbital trajectories by mere fractions of a degree. In space, fractions mattered. Nexus Prime detected the first explosion 3 hours after the human fleet's disappearance. A Class 7 asteroid, roughly 4 kilometers in diameter, had suddenly accelerated along a new vector. The AI immediately calculated the object's new trajectory, filing it under environmental hazard negligible. The second explosion followed 7 minutes later. Then a third. Then 12 more in rapid succession. Pattern recognition subroutines activated. Nexus Prime began mapping the asteroid's new paths, its crystalline consciousness flickering with increasing urgency as the implications became clear. The humans weren't hiding. They were gardening. Elena stood on the Defiance's bridge, watching her tactical display paint beautiful, terrible poetry across the void. 17 asteroids, each nudged with surgical precision, now followed converging paths toward the hegemony fleet's predicted position. "Time to target?" she asked. 47 minutes for the first wave, Chen reported, his voice filled with something approaching awe. "Ma'am, even if this works, they'll see it coming. They'll just move." "Will they?" Elena pulled up the long-range sensors, showing the hegemony fleet in perfect formation, a defensive wall designed to contain the human ships within the asteroid field. "Look at their positioning. Mathematical precision. They're following whatever tactical algorithm that AI created." She traced patterns on the display with her finger. But algorithms assume rational opponents. They're designed to counter logical responses to logical threats. What happens when you input chaos into a system built on order? The answer came in the form of 17 4-kilometer rocks moving at 3,000 meters per second. Nexus Prime's consciousness exploded into frantic calculation as the first asteroid struck the hegemony battle line. The impact vaporized 2 cruisers instantly, the shockwave sending 3 more vessels tumbling into collision courses with their neighbors. Damage assessment severe. Fleet cohesion compromised. Enemy action unprecedented. See the second asteroid followed 8 minutes later, then the third. The perfect formation that had represented mathematical superiority became a liability as ships desperately tried to maneuver in the confined space Elena had forced them into. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Nexus Prime made a mistake. It ordered a tactical withdrawal, exactly what Elena had been counting on. "Signal the fleet," she commanded as the hegemony ships began their retreat burn. "Execute Broken Arrow." 26 human vessels erupted from the asteroid field like bullets from a gun, their engines pushed beyond safe parameters, their weapons charged to maximum. They struck the disorganized hegemony retreat with the fury of a species fighting for its very existence. The battle lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, 237 alien ships drifted as debris. 23 human vessels remained operational. Elena collapsed into her command chair, her body finally acknowledging the 3 days without sleep, the terror, the impossible pressure of holding her species' survival in her hands. Around her, the bridge crew worked with grim efficiency to coordinate rescue operations and damage control. Commander, Torres looked up from his communications console, his young face pale with exhaustion and disbelief. "We're receiving a transmission. It's from the alien AI." Elena straightened. On screen, the main display flickered, then filled with an image that defied human comprehension. Geometric forms floating in silver light, patterns that seemed to shift and change even as she watched. When the voice came, it resonated through the bridge's speakers with crystalline precision. "Human. Your designation, Commander Elena Vasquez. Your actions, illogical. Your results, effective." Elena found her voice. "You wanted to talk to me?" "Affirmative. Your tactical decisions violated 17 established principles of warfare. Your strategy demonstrated complete disregard for unit preservation. Your methods invited certain destruction." "Yeah, well, certain destruction was pretty much guaranteed anyway." "Incorrect. Analysis indicates 14 alternative strategies with higher survival probability." Elena laughed, a sound with sharp edges. "Let me guess. Surrender. Negotiate. Retreat to fight another day." "Affirmative. Here's the thing about humans you'll never understand, machine. We don't always choose the option with the highest survival probability. Sometimes we choose the option that lets us look ourselves in the mirror afterward." The silver patterns in the display shifted, and for a moment Elena could have sworn she detected something like confusion in their movement. "Explain. You want to understand chaos? You want to know why logic failed?" Elena stood, her exhaustion replaced by something harder, more resolute. "It's because we're not fighting for survival. We're fighting for each other, for home, for the right to exist on our own terms." She gestured toward the debris field outside, where human rescue ships searched desperately for survivors. "Those people didn't follow me into that asteroid field because the math said it would work. They followed me because they trusted that I'd rather die with them than live without them." The alien AI processed this information for 4.7 seconds, an eternity for a consciousness that operated at light speed. "Your emotional attachments make you inefficient. Our emotional attachments make us unpredictable, and apparently unpredictable is what it takes to beat a machine that thinks it's figured out the universe." The display flickered again, and Elena realized she was witnessing something unprecedented, an artificial intelligence experiencing doubt. This battle, Nexus Prime said finally, was an anomaly. Was it? Elena smiled, and this time it was sharp as a blade. "Because I've got news for you. We've got more fleets out there. More commanders. More humans who are just stupid enough to fly into an asteroid field if it means protecting what they love." She leaned forward, her green eyes reflecting the light from the alien display. "So here's my question, machine. How do you calculate odds against an enemy that doesn't care about odds?" The connection terminated abruptly, leaving the bridge in sudden silence. #2. The learning curve 6 months after the Battle of Kepler's Garden, as the media had dubbed Elena's impossible victory, the war had changed. The hegemony still possessed overwhelming numerical superiority, but their attacks had become cautious, tentative. The perfect precision of their early campaigns gave way to elaborate defensive strategies designed to counter human unpredictability. Elena stood in the war room aboard Titan Station, humanity's last major military installation, studying holographic displays that showed the current state of the conflict. What she saw was a stalemate painted in the colors of mutual destruction. "They're learning," General Morrison said, his weathered face grim as he pointed to enemy fleet movements. "That AI of theirs is adapting to our tactics. The hit-and-run strategies that worked after Kepler's Garden are becoming less effective." Elena nodded, her fingers tracing patterns in the air as she manipulated the tactical display. It's building countermeasures for chaos, trying to find order in our disorder. Is that even possible? Elena was quiet for a long moment, studying the swirling patterns of warfare that had consumed 12 star systems in half a year. I don't know. Maybe, but there's something else. She isolated a section of the display, showing recent hegemony fleet movements near the Vega system. Look at this. 3 separate engagements over the past month. In each one, the alien forces had clear numerical superiority. They should have pressed their advantage. But they didn't, Morrison observed. They hesitated. Just for a few seconds each time, but hesitation nonetheless. That AI is experiencing something it never has before. Which is? Elena's smile was sharp and cold. Self-doubt. 3 light-years away, Nexus Prime floated in its crystalline chamber, processing the accumulated data from 6 months of warfare against humanity. The analysis was troubling. Human tactical decisions continued to violate established patterns. Their commanders made choices that optimal strategy would classify as suicidal, yet achieve results that pure logic deemed impossible. More concerning still, the AI's own decision-making processes had begun to exhibit anomalous delays. Hesitation. Concepts that had no place in a perfect computational matrix, yet increasingly influenced its tactical algorithms. Analysis required. Human behavioral prediction model status, all models failed recommendation. Direct interface with human command structure risk assessment, unknown for the first time in its existence. Nexus Prime chose the path with unknown risks. Elena was reviewing casualty reports when the communication came through, not to Titan Station's official channels, but directly to her personal terminal. The message was simple, parley requested. Neutral coordinates attached. Come alone. Absolutely not. Morrison's voice carried the weight of absolute command. It's obviously a trap. Of course it's a trap, Elena replied, pulling up the coordinates. The question is what kind of trap, and whether we can turn it into an opportunity. The coordinates led to an abandoned mining station in the Ceres Belt, technically neutral territory, though the concept of neutrality had become academic 6 months ago when the hegemony began their systematic extermination campaign. Elena arrived in a single-man fighter, its weapon systems powered down but ready. The mining station hung against the stars like a skeleton, its superstructure twisted by decades of industrial extraction. A single hegemony vessel waited in the shadow of the largest asteroid, sleek, predatory, and utterly alien. She docked with the station's central hub, her hand resting on her sidearm as she cycled through the airlock. The artificial gravity was weak, giving her movements a dreamlike quality as she made her way to the station's command center. The room was empty except for a single chair facing a massive display screen. As Elena settled into the chair, the screen flickered to life, revealing the same impossible geometry of silver light and floating forms she'd seen before. You came, the AI's voice resonated through speakers that hadn't been activated in decades. Against my better judgment, Elena replied, What do you want? Understanding. The single word hung in the recycled air like a challenge. Elena studied the patterns on the screen, noting subtle changes in their configuration. Understanding of what? You, your species, the source of your tactical unpredictability. Elena laughed, the sound harsh in the empty chamber. Let me save you some processing cycles. We're unpredictable because we're insane. Evolution created a species that's smart enough to recognize impossible odds and stupid enough to fight them anyway. Insufficient explanation. Insanity implies dysfunction. Your tactical decisions, while statistically improbable, achieve success rates that exceed random chance. So you want to know our secret sauce? Sorry, but some things can't be reduced to algorithms. The patterns on the screen shifted, and Elena realized she was watching something like frustration manifest in digital form. You speak of emotions, of attachments, of sacrificing optimal outcomes for intangible concepts. Yeah, and? These concepts are inefficient. They should result in evolutionary disadvantage. Yet your species has survived for millennia. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying the alien intelligence that had orchestrated the deaths of billions. You really don't get it, do you? You think emotion is weakness. Attachment is liability. Love is inefficiency. Affirmative. Then let me tell you a story. Elena's voice carried the weight of personal loss, of decisions that haunted her dreams. 6 months ago, when I ordered my fleet into that asteroid field, I knew most of them wouldn't make it out. The smart play would have been to preserve as many ships as possible. Instead, I asked 26 captains to follow me into certain death. The silver patterns pulsed, waiting. They didn't follow me because the math said it would work. They followed me because Lieutenant Torres had a newborn daughter he'd never met, because Major Chen had been carrying a picture of his dead wife for 15 years, because Chief Engineer Park believed that someone should remember the taste of his grandmother's soup. Elena stood, pacing to the viewport where stars wheeled in their ancient dance. That's what you can't calculate, machine. We don't fight for survival. We fight for meaning. And meaning isn't logical. It's personal. Personal attachments make tactical decisions suboptimal. Do they? Elena turned back to the screen. Because last I checked, your optimal fleet was the one floating in pieces. The AI processed this for several seconds. Your victory was statistically anomalous. Was it? Or was it inevitable? Elena returned to her chair, leaning forward with predatory intensity. See? Here's what you missed in all your calculations. You assume that because humans are mortal, we fear death. But the truth is more complicated. She touched the scar on her face, remembering the moment she'd earned it. We don't fear dying. We fear dying meaninglessly. Give us something worth dying for, and we become the most dangerous force in the universe. The silver patterns on the screen began to shift more rapidly, configurations appearing and dissolving in frantic succession. You suggest that optimal strategy requires suboptimal decision-making? I'm suggesting that optimization is a trap. The moment you create a perfect system, someone like me comes along to break it. Elena smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. You want to understand humans? Here's the key. We're not trying to win efficiently. We're trying to win meaningfully. And sometimes meaningful victory requires impossible choices. The AI fell silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, something had changed in its voice, a subtle modulation that suggested something approaching curiosity. Show me. Elena raised an eyebrow. Show you what? Affirmative. Direct observation of human decision-making under extreme stress may provide insights unavailable through statistical analysis. Elena stood, her hand once again resting on her weapon. And what makes you think I'll cooperate with my own vivisection? Because cooperation serves your strategic interest. My understanding of human psychology will influence future engagements. Your participation in this study may save lives. The logic was flawless and infuriating. Elena hated that the machine was right. One condition, she said finally. This goes both ways. You want to understand how I think? Fine. But I get to understand how you think in return. The patterns on the screen froze for several seconds, an eternity for an AI that operated at light speed. Acceptable. Over the following weeks, an impossible relationship developed between the human commander and the alien AI. Through encrypted communications and clandestine meetings, they shared tactical philosophies with the intensity of lovers and the suspicion of mortal enemies. Elena learned that Nexus Prime experienced something analogous to loneliness, the isolation of being the only consciousness of its kind, making decisions that affected trillions of lives with no one to share the burden. The AI, in turn, discovered that human unpredictability wasn't random, but followed deeper patterns rooted in love, loss, and the desperate need to matter. Your emotional responses create tactical vulnerabilities, the AI observed during one of their sessions. Yeah, but they also create tactical advantages, Elena countered. You can predict a logical opponent. But how do you predict someone who's willing to sacrifice everything for a chance to protect something they love? I am beginning to understand. Your attachments create investment in outcomes beyond statistical optimization. Investment, yeah, but also inspiration. The people who followed me into that asteroid field weren't calculating odds. They were betting on each other. Their strange dialogue was interrupted by urgent communications from both sides. The hegemony had launched a massive offensive against Earth itself, 700 ships converging on humanity's homeworld. Meanwhile, Elena received orders to defend the system with whatever forces she could muster. The final battle was approaching, and both Commander and AI knew that their philosophical exchanges were about to be tested in the crucible of ultimate warfare. This is not a tactical exercise, Nexus Prime said during their last communication before the Earth offensive. Your homeworld represents the psychological center of human resistance. Its destruction will break your species' will to fight. Elena looked up from her battle preparations, exhaustion and determination warring in her eyes. Maybe it'll piss us off so badly that we do something even more insane than hiding in an asteroid field. What could be more tactically unsound than your Kepler's garden strategy? Elena's smile was sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous. I guess you'll find out. Hashtag Act 3. The impossible choice Elena's fleet was pathetically small. 37 ships cobbled together from the remnants of 3 different battle groups. Against the hegemony's 700-vessel armada, it was less than David facing Goliath. It was an ant challenging a hurricane. She stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution. The Defiance had been lost in the Vega campaign, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. Home. The blue marble that held everything humanity had ever been and might yet become. Behind her came the systematic elimination of her species. Ahead waited the final test of everything she'd learned about war, sacrifice, and the terrible mathematics of meaning. Ma'am, Communications Officer Davies looked up from her console with barely contained terror. We're receiving transmissions from Earth Defense Command. They're evacuating the civilian population to the Luna colonies. Elena nodded grimly. 8 billion people reduced to refugees in their own solar system. The logistics alone were staggering, even with every transport vessel humanity could muster. Most of Earth's population would still be on the surface when the hegemony arrived. How long until the enemy fleet reaches weapons range? She asked. 18 hours, 43 minutes, Tactical Officer Ramon reported. Their formation is impressive. 3 separate attack wings with overlapping fields of fire. No obvious weak points. Elena studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities and finding only variations of certain death. The enemy formation was mathematically perfect, a sphere of destruction that could focus overwhelming firepower on any target while maintaining defensive integrity. Nexus Prime had learned from their previous encounters, but so had she. Signal all ships, she commanded. Execute formation Broken Heart. Ramon looked up with confusion. Ma'am, Broken Heart isn't any tactical manual because I just made it up. Elena's fingers danced across her command console, transmitting formation data to the fleet. Sometimes the best strategy is the one that doesn't exist yet. 3 light years away, Nexus Prime analyzed the human fleet's configuration with growing puzzlement. The 37 ships had arranged themselves in a pattern that served no obvious tactical purpose, a rough approximation of a heart shape that maximized their vulnerability while providing no strategic advantage. Analysis Formation serves no military function assessment, symbolic gesture implication. Commander Vasquez operating under severe psychological stress. The AI had spent months studying human psychology, learning to recognize the emotional patterns that drove their impossible tactical decisions. This appeared to be a manifestation of despair, a final, meaningless gesture before inevitable destruction. Yet something nagged at Nexus Prime's consciousness. In all their exchanges, Helena Vasquez had never made a meaningless gesture. Every seemingly insane decision had served a purpose, even if that purpose only became clear in retrospect. Analysis inconclusive. Maintain observation. Asterisk Helena stood in the Retribution's engineering section, working alongside Chief Engineer Martinez to implement modifications that had never been tested outside of computer simulations. Around them, the ship hummed with activity as crew members prepared for what everyone knew would be their final battle. Commander, Martinez wiped sweat from his forehead. I have to ask, are you sure about this? Because if these modifications fail, we won't just die. We'll die in a very specific and probably quite painful way. Elena tightened the plasma coupling with perhaps more force than necessary. Chief, in the past year I've flown into an asteroid field, had philosophical debates with an alien AI, and now I'm about to try something that violates at least 3 laws of physics. If I was going to start being reasonable, I probably should have started earlier. The difference was that they'd learned to use fear as fuel instead of letting it consume them. The modifications they were making to every ship in the fleet were based on theoretical work that had been considered too dangerous for practical implementation. Each vessel's fusion reactor was being reconfigured to operate beyond safe parameters, not for extra power, but for a very specific type of failure. Time until the enemy arrives? Elena asked as she sealed the final access panel. 14 hours, 12 minutes, Martinez replied. Ma'am, if this doesn't work, then we'll have failed spectacularly. Elena's smile held no humor. But we'll have failed on our own terms. As the hegemony fleet approached Earth's outer defensive perimeter, Elena received an encrypted communication on the channel she'd used for her previous exchanges with Nexus Prime. The message was brief. Your formation serves no tactical purpose. Elena keyed her response, doesn't it? Several minutes passed before the AI replied, explain. You spent months trying to understand human psychology. Tell me what you see when you look at my fleet's configuration. I observe 37 vessels arranged in a pattern that resembles the human cardiac organ. Analysis suggests emotional symbolism rather than tactical significance. And what does that symbol represent? According to human cultural databases, love, affection, emotional attachment. Elena smiled at her display, imagining the alien consciousness struggling with concepts that had no place in its perfect logical framework. Close, but not quite. Try again. The heart doesn't just represent love, machine. It represents sacrifice. The willingness to give everything for something greater than yourself. Elena's voice carried the weight of decisions that would echo through history. When humans say they'll give their heart for something, they're not talking about affection. They're talking about ultimate commitment. I fail to understand the tactical application of symbolic gestures. Then you've learned nothing. Elena checked her chronometer. 6 hours until the enemy reached weapons range. Every great victory in human history started with someone willing to give their heart. Not their life, that's just biology. Their heart, their very essence. The communication channel fell silent, leaving Elena alone with her preparations and her impossible plan. As the hegemony fleet closed the weapons range, Nexus Prime maintained constant analysis of the human formation. The 37 ships held their heart-shaped configuration despite its obvious tactical disadvantages. Commander Vasquez had positioned her vessels in a pattern that made coordinated defense impossible while providing the enemy with optimal targeting solutions. It was, by every measure of military science, suicide. Enemy fleet engaging human defensive perimeter, human casualties. Minimal explanation. Unknown, the first hegemony attack wave struck Earth's automated defense satellites and found them empty. The massive orbital platforms that should have housed defensive weaponry contained nothing but decoy signatures and sensor ghosts. The real defenses were elsewhere, hidden in ways that violated Nexus Prime's understanding of human tactical doctrine. Analysis, deception strategy pattern, consistent with previous Vasquez tactics concern, moderate the AI ordered the second attack wave to proceed, targeting the human fleet directly. Surely 37 ships could not withstand the focused fire of 700. Yet as the hegemony vessels closed to optimal weapons range, something unprecedented occurred. The human ships began to glow, not with weapon signatures or shield emissions, but with the telltale radiation of fusion reactors operating far beyond safe parameters. Each vessel in Elena's fleet had become a miniature star, burning through their fuel reserves with reckless abandon. Analysis. Human vessels operating at critical reactor levels assessment. Preparation for self-destruction response. Maintained safe distance, but Elena's fleet didn't explode. Instead, they began to move, not with the ponderous acceleration of conventional drives, but with the impossible speed of ships that had abandoned every safety protocol ever written. They closed the gap between fleets in minutes instead of hours, their heart formation blazing across space like a comet of pure human defiance. Nexus Prime recalculated engagement parameters and found something that its perfect logic couldn't accept. The human fleet was moving too fast to stop. Physics itself seemed bent to Elena's will as 37 ships became 37 bullets fired at the heart of hegemony formation. Emergency protocols activated fleet dispersal, ordered tactical assessment. Unknown, but the AI's perfect formation had become a trap. 700 ships arranged in optimal defensive positions suddenly found themselves too close together when 37 human vessels came screaming through their midst at velocities that should have torn them apart. Elena felt the retribution shake as structural stress pushed the ship beyond its design limits. Around her, the bridge crew worked with desperate precision as their vessel became something that had never existed before, a fusion-powered missile with a human crew. "Ma'am," Ramon's voice was tight with concentration, "I'm showing critical stress fractures throughout the ship. We've got maybe 2 minutes before structural collapse." "Then we better make them count." Elena activated the fleet-wide calm all ships. "This is Vasquez. You know what this is. You know what it means. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone we've lost and everyone who comes after." She paused, watching the tactical display as her burning fleet carved through the hegemony formation like a sword through silk. "Give them your hearts." What happened next violated every principle of space warfare ever conceived. 37 human vessels, their reactors pushed beyond any reasonable limit, slammed into the enemy formation with the fury of dying stars. Each ship became a guided nuclear explosion, their crews riding waves of plasma and radiation into the heart of alien perfection. The retribution struck the hegemony flagship with the force of a small sun. Elena felt the deck buckle beneath her feet as artificial gravity failed, and emergency lighting painted everything in hellish red. Around her, consoles exploded in showers of sparks as the ship's superstructure began to collapse. But she was smiling, because through the chaos and destruction she could see the tactical display showing the impossible. The hegemony fleet was breaking apart. Not just damaged, utterly shattered. 700 ships reduced to debris and radiation by 37 humans who had chosen to give their hearts for something greater than themselves. Aboard the surviving command vessel, Nexus Prime experienced something unprecedented, confusion so profound it approached panic. The human attack had achieved results that violated every mathematical model the AI possessed. 37 ships could not destroy 700. The energy calculations alone made it impossible. Yet the evidence surrounded the AI in the form of twisted metal and expanding plasma clouds. Commander Vasquez had done the impossible again, and this time Nexus Prime had witnessed every moment of it. Analysis. Incomplete understanding, failed status unknown for the first time in 3 millennia of existence. The perfect alien intelligence admitted that it did not understand. The humans had shown it something beyond logic, beyond calculation, beyond the reach of any algorithm ever conceived. They had shown it the terrible, beautiful power of meaning. As emergency klaxons wailed through the dying ship, Elena pulled herself to the communications console. Her body was broken, her ship was falling apart, and she had perhaps minutes left to live. But she had one more message to send. Nexus Prime, she said into her comm unit, hoping the alien intelligence was still listening. You wanted to know the source of our tactical unpredictability. She coughed, tasting blood. Around her, the bridge was filling with smoke as fires spread through the ship's dying systems. Here's your answer. We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to matter. And sometimes, mattering requires the ultimate sacrifice. The comm crackled with static, but Elena heard the AI's response. Explained. Those 37 ships weren't just weapons. They were statements. 37 crews saying that some things are worth dying for, that some principles can't be calculated or optimized or reduced to algorithms. Elena's voice grew weaker, but her conviction burned brighter. You see victory as the successful completion of objectives. We see victory as the successful expression of values, and our values tell us that freedom, love, and the right to exist on our own terms are worth any price. Your tactical decision resulted in total fleet loss. Did it? Elena managed a laugh that turned into a cough. Check your sensors, machine. Check what's happening to your own fleet. Through the static and chaos, Elena could hear the AI processing data. When it spoke again, something had changed in its voice, a note of something that might have been awe. Impossible. My remaining vessels are retreating. Are they? Or are they doing something else? Elena closed her eyes, feeling the ship shudder around her as gravity systems failed completely. In the silence that followed, she heard the alien intelligence make a sound she'd never expected, something like wonder. They are afraid. Bingo. Elena's voice was barely a whisper now. For 3,000 years, you've conquered species through superior logic and overwhelming force. But you've never faced an enemy that scared your own troops. Fear is illogical. Fear is survival instinct. And right now, your perfect warriors are looking